Many commentators suggest it has been amazing how Chinese financial regulators have been able to weather the financial storms one after another, starting from 1997 to 2008, both of which you mentioned. So what is China's strength, and what could be China's challenge in terms of how the financial regulator would be still able to, weather the storms?
That's a good question. I think that fundamentally we have to say, be very open and frankly, a lot of financial institutions, like big banks, are owned by the states. So they have sort of a state's reputation. So it's not their own credit worthiness, it's rather state credit worthiness, right? So that makes things very different. So for them to run a bank run, I think the risk is lower. So this is happened in 1998 in Asia financial crisis and all other. I think that's one reason. And people trust the bank because you are state-owned, the government will bail you out at the end. I think that's one thing. The second issue is China is very big. The good thing is the big financial institutes are quite safe and strong. For example, 4 major state-owned banks have very high capital ratios, high net interest margin, and lower non-performance loans. It's even around less than 1.2, 1.3%, and very high provisions for bad loans. And the provision for bad loan is over more than 200%. So that means you write up for all the bad loans, you still have a cash flow there. So I think that the banking sector still, is very solid. I think that's one reason. But there's a lot of small regional banks because the business model is issue, governance issues, mismatch that happens on the balance sheets. So there are still risks. So we observe the bank runs in several Henan, in Liaoning, Dongbei, Shengjing Yinhang, for example, Baotou Yinhang. There are several of those cases, more than 10 in the past few years. I think those things will happen. It's very much market practice now. The good news, the Chinese authority, the central bank and regulators learn from experience, so have a sort of procedures to deal with this type of things. So make sure those things will not cause systemic risk. I think this is the most important thing. So you see, time at time we see a bank run, we see a bank crisis, but we don't see even a regional financial crisis. I think that's the reason. You can mobilize the resource from central to local and make sure we will not make this case become a regional crisis.